Don't wait for your father or mother to give you any wealth. In fact, you should not accept it. And do not expect anything in the form of a dowry through the wife. Earn your own wealth. That is what the Dharma Shastras say. So, the second objective is through righteous ways acquire wealth. And the third is employ the wealth. Don't be miserly. Don't be stingy. Spend it wisely and liberally so that your genuine desires will be fulfilled, gratified. Can we stop there? Certainly not. As dharma is the first part of our purushartha, the human objective, acquisition of wealth is the second one, second phase I should say, and gratifying or fulfilling desires the third. There is something called fourth, the moksha. What is that? Becoming totally free. There is no necessity for fostering any kind of a desire whatsoever. Who will desire? That person who feels that I am incomplete. I want something. If I don't get what I want, I become discontent. The contentment goes away. So, moksha is that state of inner affluence, abundance, fullness, opulence and comprehensiveness. This is called moksha. Many people think that moksha is escaping from the continuous series of birth and death. It is not so. You should not think that moksha is a posthumous reward. After the death in this body, you will win moksha somewhere else. Certainly not. Just like our hunger is current, and fulfillment of the hunger is also a current phenomenon. In the same manner, you will find every spiritual, philosophical, religious and yogic achievement or attainment also should be related to this world and this life. So don't shift moksha for any time later. As you are having suffering and bondage right here and now, your mind feels it, your intelligence understands it. In the same mind and intelligence, you should start feeling the impact of moksha also. That is why I always say, it is getting free from the shackles of the mind and intelligence. The intelligence always has a quest. It also has doubts. The mind has emotional turbulence. It can be in the form of a desire. It can be in the form of a hatred, fear, and multiples of these three fundamental or basic emotional pulls. Now, moksha is that state where you are well born, you are given to dharma, righteousness, you have the reasonable degree of education, and there are so many ways whereby your knowledge can be made available for the society's pool, productivity, and you are rewarded in the process. And getting the remuneration, you use it for fulfilling your good and noble desires. In the process, you get married, you have children, everything is okay. But how long can the game go? As you start doing a work, the work has to be complete. So, earning, it has to stop one day. Employing the earning for fulfilling desires, that also should stop. And you should become free like air or space. This is called moksha. Whenever we speak of devotion and fondness for God or reliance on Him, understand that it is connected with moksha. Srimad Bhagavata specifically says this. How can moksha be had, if you ask me? Jnanadeva kaivalya praptihi. Moksha or redemption can only be the outcome of proper knowledge. Knowledge about what? Not knowledge about the object world. That makes you wealthy perhaps, if you can employ your knowledge for beneficial purposes. If you have a skill or an experience or a merit, which either an administrative unit or an industrial outfit looks for, they may pay you sumptuously. These are days when people are getting very easily salaries in multiples of lakhs, if not crores. That is possible. But you will not get the joy of redemption, freedom, peace, harmony and inner abundance with this kind of an object knowledge and skill. Your knowledge will have to be of the subject. The subject is always opposed to and different from the object. This world is an object around us. the subject is inward to it, like the center of a circle. So where is the subject? I am looking at the world through the senses. So the senses are on my body. And when I am looking through the senses, employing them, that I must be inside the body. And that is the subject. If you are able to acquire the knowledge of the subject, that will lead you and result in redemption and moksha. So, jnanadeva kaivalya praptihi. That is why Srimad Bhagavata discusses in 18,000 verses the subject of devotion and the subject of redemption. God is actually representing such qualities which, if you are able to imbibe, every one of them will lead to inner redemption for you. So devotion to God means the precursory for gaining liberation. And if the devotion becomes full in your heart and it fulfills you, then you are already liberated. So Chaturvidha Purushartha it is called. Now Hiranyakashipu told Chandamarkas, to whom he entrusted the education of the young boy, Prahlada, who always was loving and relying upon Lord Hari, whom Hiranyakashipu considered enemy number one. He said, never teach him dharma and moksha. Speak to him only about artha and kama. This is what he said. After education for a while, teaching him, the teachers presented the child before the father and there was a dialogue between them. At one point, the second time, the teacher said, this boy is speaking about Lord Vishnu. He speaks about dispassion, leaving the household, going to a forest, sitting in austerity there, contemplation there. He has no regard for anything like external pleasure, attraction or allurement. How is it that the boy is like this? Did you teach him? No. Did anybody stealthily come and deliver these lessons to him? No. Don't get angry with us, the teacher said. This boy has this kind of a devotional affinity and fondness by his very nature and birth. If it is not had from your teachers and from the others, where from did you get it? This was the interrogation of the father. Then the child says, Madirna Krishne Paradasvatova Mithobhipadyeda Grihavratanam. This kind of a devotion which I enjoy, I am enriched with, towards Lord Krishna, this cannot be imbibed from any family, particularly a family like yours, my dear father, he said. Paradasvatova Mithobhipadyeda. Nobody else will give this devotion. The household is a totally different place. It is not a place for bhakti or virakti, devotion or dispassion. It is only a place for enjoyment, greed, luxury, comfort, unsatiable desire. This is the place. The household is a place hosting and breeding all these things. So I haven't got it from Grihavratanam. All the people are having Griha as their vrata. Just see the language and the word used. I wish all of you know a little Sanskrit. We know about a number of vratas. And all the vratas are generally associated with some deity, god or a spiritual concept. Here he puts the word, Vedavyasa puts it, Grihavratana. All the people who live in the household, they have only one vrata and one anushtana. What is that? Griha, the house. My house. The color of the paint. The type of roof I must have. The comforts I must have. The air conditioning I must have. The internal communication I must have. They only have Griha as the vrata. But this Griha, they have to leave and go. Even the body they have to leave and go. If the body itself is to be finally left, what about the house? Is it something to be taken when you go? So this Grihavrata people, Adanta Gobhihi, they may live for 50 years, 60 years, 80 years. Even when you ask them, have you lived enough abundantly? Are you happy? No, what can be done? I have become old and I cannot enjoy. They will start speaking in this manner. So Adamta Gobhihi, Vishatam Tamisram. Actually, to be in the household means to be in pitch darkness. Our vision is blurred. Our vision is completely clouded. We have no taste for God, taste for devotion. You will not invite any Mahatma into your house. You will not take time to listen to a spiritual or a philosophical discourse. You have no routine of reading Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, chanting Vishnu Sahasranama or anything else. All the books are detective novels. All the books are professional ones. There is no place for the great literature called Srimad Bhagavatam, the Upanishads, the Bhagavad Gita, Mahabharatam, Ramayana and the like. You know, this Ramayana was written by Valmiki Maharshi in Treta Yuga. We are having now Kali Yuga now. Kali Yuga itself consists of 4,52,000 or so years. Double that is Dwapara Yuga. 3 times Kali Yuga is Treta Yuga. This Ramayana is said to have been written by Valmiki in Treta Yuga. We have never seen the original leafy scripture he made. We don't have the steel pen he used for cutting across the fibers of leaves. That also we don't have. His hermitage also we don't know. But his Ramayana is still alive in a vibrant manner, in a boisterous manner, in a buoyant manner. Even now it is prevailing. People do not want to change one syllable from that Ramayana poetry. They want it in the same manner in which Maharshi wrote. Can you imagine this kind of a fondness for an author, an immortal author? Are your children fond of you, the parents, so much as these Ramayana lovers fond of Valmiki, the author? Understand that filial fondness which people have towards Valmiki Maharshi. Similarly for Vyasadeva. Now this is something very, very great. Why don't you have a copy of it in your house? Why don't you read it periodically, if not daily, at least once in a week, 2 times in a month? Call all the family members and start reading it. After all, what does it tell you? It always tries to enrich your mind, enrich your heart, enrich your intelligence. It takes away the load from the human mind. It gives you clarity of vision. It gives you self-reliance, power. We call it Atma Bala. That self-power, power derived from one's own within. Our body is touching the ground, but the mind is not touching anywhere. If at all it is resting on the Supreme. Which is that Supreme? That on which the whole universe is resting. It is something wonderful. Ramayana speaks only of that. Mahabharata discusses that and that alone. Both the scriptures want you to look at life from a spiritual point of view. Don't think that the seer in you is the eyes. Certainly not. The seer in you is not in the body. He is not even in the mind, not even in the intelligence. He is beyond even the ego. There is a center, a core in your personality, like a pith of a tree, which we call the eye, the center, the soul. Now, Ramayana, Mahabharata, Srimad Bhagavatam and all other scriptural texts want you to look at the whole world and life anchored in your soul, so that you will always become unshakable, unshakable. Look at this young boy, Prahlada. What does he speak to his father? A demon, emperor, with a sword. By the movement of his eyebrows, the Digantas are going to tremble. The Dikpalas will be frightened. Even before such a father, he says that Madirna Krishne Paratasvatova Mithobhipadyeta Grihavratanam. My dear father, all of you are given to the household. In your case, you are given to the palace. You are a palace holder. That's all the difference. You have this palace alone as the brother, nothing else. Adanta Gobhi. As age advances, there must be some maturity and maturation coming to us. But nothing happens. Our eyes become weak, seeing and seeing. But the craving for seeing does not abate at all. Similarly the tongue, similarly the nose, similarly the skin, similarly the ears. The world is enjoyed by us. But actually, are we enjoying the world or the world enjoys us. In the process of enjoying the world, we become exhausted. We go behind the curtain, but the world still thrives with all its thrills, pushes and pulls. Adanta gobhi vishatam tamisram punah punah charvida charvananam. Punah punah, again and again, charvida charvananam, chewing and enjoying the same cud. The substance is not different. Yesterday you lived in your house. So many yesterdays have passed, and today also you are living. The same bed, the same cot, the same pillow, the same fan, the same bulb. What kind of a variety is there? It is all living the same day over and over again. Charvida charvananam. This is a very special usage in Indian language. Chewing the cud. This is what the Grihavrata people, the householders do. Nate viduhu. They do not know. Swarthagatim hi Vishnum. I think I must reward Vedavyasa for having used this word. Swarthagatim hi Vishnu. Lord Vishnu, the Parama Kalyana Nidhi, the treasure of supreme spiritual felicity and fulfillment. Parama Kalyana Nidhi, that Lord Hari, he says, Swarthagati. The word Swartha literally means selfishness. But understood well, Artha means the object to be sought and gained. Swa means for oneself. So if you think deeply, you will find what is the one object or goal which will make me fulfilled. If you understand and think, it is God, Lord Vishnu. It is not your family. It is not your husband, parents, wife, children, property, riches, position, power, glory, fixed deposits, gold, nothing. Only Lord Vishnu will be able to bestow fulfillment for you. So if you are seekers of selfish gains, better look for God. From dharma, artha and kama, both can be had, Vedavyasa declares. If you neglect the dharma, artha and kama will be lost. Now we are passing through a situation where the scams are becoming the subject of the whole country and even the world. Why these scams have come? Only because of the personal greed. They thought that using the power and position which people have entrusted to them through the elections, the extent of faith, the extent of expectation which they have brought through their elections, they have completely deceived the entire electorate and the people. Why? What is the reason? The reason is greed, craving. They don't understand. If they look to God, they will get this and a lot more. Durashayaye bahirarthamanina. Their mind is dominated by vicious and evil desires. Bahirarthamanina. They are pinning the objective for fulfilling their life outside. It is mind that requires fulfillment. It is your heart that looks for fulfillment, either for the mind or for the heart or for the intelligence or even for your ego. Fulfillment rests anywhere outside. The mind projects or creates desires, and the mind itself pursues them. Maybe the pursuit implies some extent of objectivity in the outside world, but when the desire is fulfilled, that desire becomes extinct. Where do you feel fulfillment? In the same mind which started desiring. So initially it desires, later on it withdraws from the desire. So the desire extinction is really the mental fulfillment of any desire whatsoever. Then what should you try for? Let me constantly live in the extinction of desires. Try for that. Durashayaye behirarthamaninaha. And what is their plight? Andha yatha andhairubhaniyamana. All are blind people. And somebody comes from amongst them. I will lead you. He extends your hand. You catch hold of it. Poor you cannot know that he is also blind. Any blind man or blind people will have to be guided and led by another person. In this case, what is happening? All the householders are equally blind. If somebody comes to lead them, extending their hand, you will find all of them, the leader as well as the led, all of them are blind. So how many times will they topple? You can think about it. Vachishatantyam urudam nibaddha. They also claim that they are Vedic people. They adhere to the Vedas. But they are adhering to the Vedic portion, that portion which always speaks about desires and fulfillment. They are not able to understand it. They get bound by the flowery promises, the flowery speeches of the Vedas, by virtue of which they lay down a number of rituals and ceremonies in order to fulfill the desires of people. Naisham madhistavadurukramangrim sprushatyanartha apagamo yadartha mahiyasam padarajobhishekam nishkinchananam navranitayavad. My dear souls, listeners, viewers, this is the one verse I would like you to write. Keep it in your house. Put it in the kitchen, put it in the drawing room, place it also in the bedroom, so that you will read it and understand it. Herein lies the fulfillment, the promotion, the progress of householder life. Naisham matihi tavadurukramangrim sprushatyanartha apagamo yadartha mahiyasam padarajobhishekam nishkinchananam navranitayavad. I would like to recite and explain this verse in thousands of places in our country, if not in the rest of the world. Such a great nectarine statement is this. These householders, all of you are, who are deluded in this manner, there will be no improvement or elevation in their plight as long as their mind, their intelligence does not betake to the lotus holy feet of the Supreme Lord. My dear souls, try to become devotees. Have love for the Lord. Be lovers of God. I distinguish between the two. Having love for God is one. To become a lover of God means you always remain a lover. You don't have to practice it. So you should start saying, at least from today onwards, I am a lover of God. Don't say I fear God. Don't say I respect God. Don't say I am curious about God. Always say I love Him. I am a lover. He is my beloved. Sprushatyanarthapagamo yadarthaha. Only the holy feet of the Supreme Lord Hari have the power to redress, to dispel all your anxieties, all your agitations, all your disturbances of the mind. Every craving will be looked after by Him. Every disturbance will be appeased by Him. Every agitation will be redressed by Him. Mahiyasam padarajobhishekam nishkinchananam navranitayavad. Normally, you will never really be able to know what is this Lord Hari like and what is this devotion like. If you have to be a lover of God, somebody will have to guide you and explain to you what is this God, who is this God, and what it means to love Him. Where from will you get this wisdom, direction and guidance? It can only come from the Mahatmas. Who is a Mahatma? The wise people, the magnificent souls. They also have bodies like you. They have tongue to speak, they have eyes to see, ears to hear. But all these are not the point. Their mind is different. Their intelligence is different. They are spiritually great people, wise people, ecstatic people, fulfilled, noble, magnificent souls. Now such souls, mostly they will be ascetic people, sannyasis, for whom austerity is the wealth, austerity is the treasure. They will also live in the same world. The world is the same. We are all living upon the earth, breathing the same air. But their objective in life is not the material, external world or its things. They always look for inner glory, inner splendor, inner affluence and abundance. And they are enriched with it. They will be floating in that inner abundance. Mahiyasam. They are called Mahatmas. People with great souls, great insight.